Hello, everyone. This is Under the Mayo, and this is the first installment of a series that I'm starting. I think I'm calling it Profiles in Gaming Enthusiasm, and I didn't really have a better name than that. And I'm going to be interviewing people that I think are interesting in the gaming scene, and one of the first names that came to mind was the one and only Slips or Slip Kicks. He's here with me. Slips, would you say hi and would you introduce yourself?
Hi, thanks for having me. I appreciate you. I'm being your person of interest for your first show. That's pretty cool. But yeah, I'm me. What do you want to know?
Well, this is just going to be a pretty casual talk, and I'd like to talk to you about what your own personal gaming history is, your taste in gaming, and we can just kind of let this conversation go wherever we want it to. I have a list of topics, some things I'd like to hit, but we can kind of go wherever we want with it. So I think maybe a good place to start. The people who are listening to this on my channel, the majority of them came here from Doom, and I know you from Mortal Kombat. So I'm betting that the majority of people who are going to listen to this don't know who you are the way that I do. So could you run us through maybe like what is your history of getting into gaming? Could you take me from there to your early Tekken days to like before you even knew what frame data was and all that stuff? Like what got you into thinking of games on another level? And then take me through the glory days of Tekken and into MK9 and Injustice, and then into the NRS testing. I think that would be a pretty good. Could you just start at the beginning, and I'll just engage with you back and forth as you go.
That's straight from the very beginning. All right.
That's where I want to start. Oh, wait, okay, how should people know you?
God said, "Let there be light."
I know you as Slips, right? But you started, your original name was Slip Kicks, right?
No, it's just Slips.
It is just Slips. Okay.
Slips just became such a common name on other forums and platforms. Like it was always used, but Slip Kicks was never used. So that was just like an alteration of the original name.
All right. So yeah, what got you into gaming just in the beginning?
Well, I mean, just a kid growing up in the '80s. As soon as we got, I remember playing, Space Invaders at home when I was a child. I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Space Invaders. Okay, yeah.
And then the Nintendo came out, and I was like, this is now the coolest thing I ever seen. And
what were the first games?
Oh man, for Nintendo, obviously Mario Brothers, and then my first game that I really just went ham on as a child was Gradius, because it reminded me of Space Invaders and everything. So Gradius was like, the first game I ever beat was Gradius, and so I love shoot 'em ups. Like they're like one of my favorite genres. And I had a brother, so he was like 4 years older than me, so he usually just beat me in like all these games. But as far as it went to fighting games, though, for some reason, fighting games, I would go toe to toe to him and sometimes beat him, and that was just kind of like, a flag. Like, for some reason, I'm good at fighting games. Like he'll blow, and he's really a smart guy too. So even when he was a kid, he was like super smart. So it was
what fighting games are we talking about here?
This was like Street Fighter. When Street Fighter 2 came out, everyone's jaw dropped because it was just, I remember I would have like these little chubby ninja figurines, and I would fight them in like a tournament style, and I would pretend that they were like, because they're the big fighting game thing was beat 'em ups at the time, like Double Dragon,
Turtles,
Streets of Rage, you had Turtles in Time, and the arcade game. So like the beat 'em up genre is where you just took two characters and you fought them. Or
you just walk right.
But
walk right and kill everything.
You're right, and then Street Fighter 2 was just like, holy crap! Like this is just a better version of that, and you fight like your friends, like 1-on-1, in a quasi like level playing field.
Yeah.
And Street Fighter 2, me and my brother would play, and I got really into it. I ended up like, being the best kid on the block or whatever. And I was like, wow, that's super cool. And
Were you did you play most characters, or did you gravitate towards a certain style?
I played them all when I was a child. I would literally just go down the line. Me and my brother had this thing where I would start with Ryu, he would start with Ken. We'd do that match, and then I would move over one cursor to Honda. He'd move over one cursor to I think Chun-Li. So like we would both go down the line and do these matchups, and then sometimes we'd reverse it. I'd start with M Bison, and he'd start with Ryu or whatever. Like it was so much fun, man. Like it was the dawn of fighting games. Everyone
Yeah.
was like, "What's a charge move?" Like you hold down 2 seconds. Like we were kids,
Yeah.
we couldn't even figure out how to do a dragon punch half the time. We would get it on accident and be like, "Whoa," you know?
Yeah, and every fighting game character was just kind of like Ryu, spinning kick, fireball, and that's like all you did. Or at least that's what I did as a little kid. I had Street Fighter on Genesis, Street Fighter 2, and I mean
Mhm.
I just did this. I just did the special moves. That's all I
Oh
did.
yeah, so
I
fun.
didn't think about anything else.
Oh, I remember the first time like I strategized doing a jump kick into a sweep on my brother, and like it was hitting him like for like 10 matches straight. He was just like, "What?" And then like, that evolved to doing a jump kick and then like walking up and throwing, and like that was like the brokest thing. It was just like so cheap, and it just kind of evolved from there. And then, we would play Mortal Kombat and stuff. So it was like me and my brother, like we would play fighting games, and I always was like pretty decent against him considering the age gap. So that was nice. And then it went to I was in high school, kind of the same thing. I was a very loyal to the Nintendo 64. I didn't have a PlayStation, so at first I didn't like Tekken because I was just like, man, screw that. It's all about Fighter's Destiny. I was like, Fighter's Destiny on the 64 is my jam.
And I
But
was into Star Gladiator, so we all have our guilty pleasures, I guess.
right, right. But then like someone talked smack to me about it. They were just like, yeah, you might be good at this game, but it's all about Tekken. And I was like, man, whatever. So I ended up playing Tekken in arcade for the first time. I played Tekken 3. And I was like, man, I saw Eddie Gordo, and I was like, wow, that is a cool freaking character. He does all these cartwheels and stuff, and he just kind of keeps spinning, and the more he spins, the more kicks he does. Like, what a cool. So I was like, this is a real fighting style. Like, this is a legit fighting style. Are you kidding me? I was like, this is like something that I would do if I were to make a fighting style. This is how I'd fight. I'd just be spinning around with my legs and arms and doing crazy stuff. And
How old
so
were you when you discovered that character and got into using him?
I was probably like 14, 15. I was a
Okay.
teenager.
All right, so this is early high school that you started getting into Tekken.
Yeah, and I'd say my senior year in high school, I was really into football, and I was just trying to have a really good senior year in football, and I got hurt. And I was out for like 6 weeks. I had some back injuries, so it gave me a lot of time to. And that's kind of 1999 is when Tekken Tag came out, and that was hitting the arcades. And I remember going up to the arcade on like a Saturday night, and there was just a big crowd of people, and I was like, "What the hell is going on? I've never seen a crowd." And there was two Tekken Tag machines, and there's these two dudes on there, like just destroying everyone. They both had like 50 game win streaks.
Hmm.
And then this was in Tekken, and I was like, "What the hell?" I was like, "Are you kidding?" I was like, "You can actually someone's." I used to be impressed just to beat my brother and be the best in the neighborhood. These are dudes that are like best in well, at least this region of the city. And I was just like, "This is amazing! Like, who can beat these dudes?" You know? I was like, "This is just." At that point, I was like, "That's what I want to do. I want to be
Did you get
someone
to
who
play
can
against them?
beat."
Did you just see how it felt to get your ass whooped?
Yeah, I totally got smeared, but it was just like, wow, like it was just watching them beat everybody. It was like
Yeah.
watching Bruce Lee take on the entire, squad of foot soldiers or whatever when he's going in to save the girl or and stop all the drugs or whatever from the claw guy or whatever. It was just like a fantasy fight of that, like being played in my head. Like this dude's taking out 50 guys. This dude's taking out 50 guys. Like what the hell? This is awesome.
I remember something from one of your podcasts. I think it was the one that you were doing with King Hippo, where you talked about that moment where like you thought you were good at Tekken, and then you like because Slips. I have for the people listening who don't know, you've been on multiple podcasts, especially in the Mortal Kombat scene, and for several years, and like hundreds of podcasts. And so I'm not alone in this. I know there are a lot of people from that time in MK who have just all these like random kind of like story details of all these like stories you told, or like kind of like weird quotes of yours that have just kind of stuck with us. And I know, and one of the ones like the Triforce of talent, and like all the stuff you come up with.
Yeah, there'd
And
be like other renditions of that came out of that.
and there's one thing that you talked about. I remember you talked about a moment where you said that you thought you were good at Tekken, and then you went somewhere and you got your ass kicked, and that you had a choice to make, right? It was either, okay, well, I guess I'll just, be like this. This is the way I play, or I can make the decision, sit down, and be like, and think, what is this guy doing, right? What can I do better?
Yeah, that's a little further down in the story.
Okay, okay. I thought maybe this was exactly with the moment you're talking about with these guys.
No, this was the moment where I wanted to get good, and I wanted to be as good as these guys. And then it got to the point where I would see one of those dudes come up every once in a while, and like he would just beat me almost every time. But I would learn a lot. And then he was eventually gone. Like he didn't come back anymore. And I remember I would bought a PlayStation just to get Tekken 3, just to learn the moves, because you couldn't find them, like, there was no internet. And so I go up to that mall one day, and there is a freaking huge crowd, biggest crowd I ever saw. And there was a Tekken tournament going on, a Tekken tag tournament going on, and people from all over the freaking country, well, probably not the country, but the Midwest were there. And I was just like, what? And then the two dudes that had the 50 streaks going on that one night I came, they this was when the Tekken tags first came out on the PlayStation 5 or PlayStation 3, or excuse me, just the PlayStation 2. And they ended up moving the tournament to like this college campus ground. And those two dudes ended up winning the tournament. And I remember the first, so I went into this tournament, not knowing anything, just saying like, maybe I can take someone out. And I ended up having to face the dude that, who would have like one of those 50 streaks, and he would beat me all the time. So, but I remembered his name. His name was Armor King 2. And I was like, okay. And that's when the Tekken, and I also saw where people were going for the Tekken website, Tekken Zaibatsu. Like, I didn't even know there was a website. Like, I don't know, I'm an idiot kid. This is the early 90s. I didn't know anything about the internet. And so I went onto that website, I registered, I looked for that Armor King 2 dude, and I practiced up hella hard. I ended up like being the best at that arcade. And I was like, all right, I'm ready for this dude. And I went and played him, and he beat the shit out of me again. I knew how to do every move. There wasn't a move I couldn't do, but this dude knew how to low parry, and it just like disrupted everything. And then, but from there on out, like, me and him were cool, and like we played like all the time. Like he called me up the next day, we played. And so I was kind of like his training dummy. Like he would just kind of test things on me. But I was getting a lot out of it because I was playing someone way better, and I could, I was able to test out stuff that he had just really good defense, so that he wouldn't let me get away with anything if it didn't have a weakness. So it really forced me to funnel my game to learn like really what is the best optimal 50-50s, what's the best, really forced me to think. It taught me how to think a lot in a lot of ways. Just what's the smartest way of going about this? You have to be able to mount an offense without putting yourself at too much risk. So those days were just getting the tar beat out of me. I learned a lot. But yeah, it did get to the point where me and him, like, we would go back and forth and everything. Like, so that was a big point. But the time you're talking about where I had to choose between, playing, against how to beat this guy versus how do I like to play my own self. It got to the point where me and him were so good. Me and him became like pretty much the two best in St. Louis.
Nice.
And we would play, and it would get to the point where he developed a style just custom made to beat me, and it would force me to go off of my main just style of play that would destroy like 95% of the people I would play. and it was just so obnoxious to be able to beat it. And I was starting to get good at beating him, doing this really cheap tactic to throw me off of my game. But when I would play other people, I would not be maximizing my offense. I'd be playing it too safe, and so it was just messing with the whole game and messing with my whole game. So it was just, I did have to choose, like, do I really want to learn how to beat my friend if it's really going to hurt my game against everyone else that I play? And so I made a decision at that point, like what you were saying, is if I end up having to play my friend in tournament, he kind of had an edge on me because of this, because I didn't want my game to get corrupted, just trying to learn how to beat what he was doing to me. And I knew no one was gonna be doing this thing, because
Right.
it was just, all he was doing was just backdash canceling, and he would just throw out a jab or a duck jab, and he would just get the life lead, and he would just do that, and it was just. It's so obnoxious to try and overcome, and he also had a team. He had Devil and Armor King, and these characters in Tekken Tag, the first Tekken Tag, the characters have damage tiers. Like Devil has the biggest life bar; he takes the most damage out of anyone in the game, and then Armor King also was like second tier, like second most. Like, so when they hit you and you had to try and make a comeback on them, it was just hard because they soaked up a lot of damage. So it was just like he was doing this really cheap, and he wasn't gonna do this against anyone else but me. And I was like, God, this is bullshit. So yeah, to that point where you're talking about, that was that instance where his name was Unconquerable. Some people might know him.
Yeah, I remember you throwing that name around a lot.
Yeah, but that's pretty much the story of that as far as like Tekken. And then after, pretty much because me and him trained so much, we just got so damn good. He had like, high aspirations to do good in tournaments and everything, and I just wanted to be good. I just wanted to see if I could get that good, and we just both ended up just going around. Ended up moving to Japan, and I started going around during the Tekken 4 era, just mopping up all the Tekken Tag tournaments that if anyone dared to have one. I was like, if anyone has a Tekken Tag tournament, I will destroy you guys. And for like 2 years, I just went around destroying everyone. And then like people were kind of getting sick of Tekken 4 just because the game wasn't good, and everyone kind of knew that Tekken Tag was the game that really brought everyone together in the Tekken scene. So people started going back to Tekken Tag, and that's when like my friend Sean came back from Japan, and like we were still going around like Tekken tournaments, just like regulating, or Tekken Tag tournaments, just regulating. So that's kind of how I got my jump into Tekken. And then Tekken 5 came out, and it was kind of the same thing. I had pretty good success in that game.
Do you have any Evo medals?
Not actual medals, because they didn't exist if you got top 8. But I've gotten top 8 at Evo like 3 different times in Tekken.
In Tekken Tag or otherwise?
Twice in Tekken Tag and once in Tekken 5.
Okay, wow, that's something. Okay. Now that Evo's coming to my mind, another random slip story is coming into my head. I don't remember the details of it. All I remember is some story about a top 8 Evo match and a wireless controller being turned on and you being involved in somehow.
That wasn't Evo.
It wasn't Evo? Okay, what was it? Please tell me the story.
That has happened at Evo, but that particular instance that you're talking about wasn't me. I won't say who it was.
All right.
I don't know, for some reason they went to keep that secret.
Sure.
But there was like a Tekken 6 tournament, and this was in California. It was the first. It was called Strong Style. It was in I think Southern California, somewhere in the LA region. And this was one of the first big Tekken 6 tournaments, because Tekken 6 was pretty new to the US. It had already been out in Japan and Korea for like a year. But Korea was bringing like their top players. Like I think one of them was named Rame. I think JDCR was another one. This was really early JDCR. I can't remember if he was there or not. Anyway, they had their top players. One of their names was Rain. He was really, really good. And one of our players, Kane, they were playing in the top 8, and I think they were fighting for the top 8, and just getting one of these Koreans just to put them in losers was a big deal. It's like, oh my God. And it was down to the last round, and Kane ended up hitting the Korean with like this snake edge sweeper. He ended up launching him in the first round and getting him to the wall. And I was just so excited. I was like, he's going to do it. And I just remember my thumb barely grazing over the PlayStation home button. And then I was like, I wonder if what I just did is going to do something. And then I saw the screen turn to the home screen. And I was just like, I just did that. I just did that. And then everyone was just like, what the fuck? You know, everyone, can I curse on here? I don't know.
Yeah, it's fine.
Then everyone was just like, you know what is going on? Who did that? And I was just like, oh my God, that was me. I just fussed up to it. And it was just like, I was like, you know what? I'm not big into Tekken 6 anyway. And that's when I started playing Call of Duty. I kind of took a break from Tekken after that.
That's great. So how did, going from Tekken, then you found yourself in the NRS scene with Mortal Kombat 9, which came out in April of 2011. And I don't remember when people really started to see your play. It couldn't have been too long after that. I want to say that you're a name that started popping up more in prominence probably around the time of like Summer Jam, like around the rise of the Crazy Dominican Brothers, right? Around the time, because that was when MK9 started coming alive, right? It wasn't even Evo. I mean, Evo was big, right? But it was a couple months after that when CD Junior started popping up with Jax, you know, and like that's when the scene really started to just like blow up, and the Atlanta scene started getting really good, and GGA was forming. And so I think that's about the time you started popping up in the NRS scene. How did you go from Tekken to the NRS scene?
Well, I always loved Mortal Kombat. I just always loved that series just as a kid growing up. So when I remember one of their producers, Hector Sanchez, saying like, you know, we're going back to 2D. They were making like a hard push to, you know, to try and be like a respectable tournament game. And when the MK9 came out and I looked at it and I saw the demo and everything, and I was like, man, this looks good. I was like, this looks really fun.
It felt good to play. That demo, that first demo, I was like, this feels so smooth.
Yeah, I was just like, man, this actually has some promise to it. And a friend of mine, 16-bit, they were super into it too. So it was just like, and they were also like super into Tekken, so we were already friends. Mm-hmm. And so we were just like, hey, let's go ham on this. And they ended up being friends with Hector and like some of the other NRS guys that were just going around at gaming conventions like PAX and stuff. And they were doing a good job, like, you know, just communicating, just, you know, socializing with them. And with that, so we were going to go ham on MK from pretty much that point because we were just both such fans of it. And then, and the scene was just so young and fresh, and it was like, these guys don't know anything about fighting games.
Like we didn't. It took us 6 months to figure out that you could anti-air someone with a jab.
That was another great thing about it, because no one knew what NRS was going to come up with as far as a fighting game system.
Yeah.
And so 16-bit had played MK versus DC, so they were kind of familiar with the engine a little bit, with a lot of carryover from that. But yeah, just figuring out, like, a lot of people don't know that the frame advantage, like figuring out that how the frame advantage was different from when you got hit crouching versus when you would get hit standing was like totally different. Like no one really knew. And yeah, no one understood the mechanics. There was no frame data. So it was hard. And with a block button, like you're not always going to come out crisply out of your block to punish everything perfectly. Like, so there was just a lot of learning. The whole community was learning, like the fighting games, like just Mortal Kombat, just fighting games. They were just trying to figure that out. And then us, even as fighting game veterans, were trying to figure out how this game works and what's the best
with
way
all
to
this
play.
weirdness.
Mm-hmm. So it was just a blast, and it was just, you know, a time where even to this day, we kind of get an, even with, you know, the MKX and MK11, they still kind of take a Q from, MK9. Like, it's all still duck jab, down 4, down 3.
Yeah. Oh, there's a
like
Mortal Kombat
strings.
style. There is, right?
Yeah.
The meta changes. There's different mechanics and everything, but there's a style just like there is in any other game.
Like it took us a long time to dissect that first game, just because we don't know what they're doing. We don't know what their value system is as developers. But even when they do just make a whole new Mortal Kombat game, and it's the special moves are different, all the graphics are different, and the normals seem like they're different, and they are for the most part. But we understand the developers' values and what they're going for now. So it's still in the power of the internet and everyone playing it. So they're just a lot easier to break down now. But if they were to go totally different, like make down 4s just totally different, make down 1s like just totally go against the whole, just flip the table on. I mean, then maybe. Because it felt like that in Injustice too. When Injustice came out, it was just like, what on earth are they doing? What is this?
Well,
we were all kind of relearning it.
All the down ones were like characters had down ones that were like plus on block that they could cancel into things that were also plus on block. It's like
it was totally different. Like, it felt so fresh. It felt like MK9 over again, but a little more rough, just because the game just is pretty rough on casuals and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, those are good. Those are great times.
So in that first year, you started the podcast, and so a pillar of the early MK community was the Combat Tomb podcast, which is something I've kind of modeled our Ketchup, Mayo, and Spud Doom Eternal podcast after. It's
Nice.
it's inspired a lot by your format. I try to have kind of a funny blooper in the beginning, a little intro tune, and then there's a 3-way talk. And then we keep it casual. We bring on a guest, so it's very Combat Tomb podcast. And
Nice.
I want to know how that got started, because I have memories of conversations of like listening to the audio files online in late 2011, but I only remember it as you in 16-bit. I don't remember K7 there. I may be misremembering this. So how did the podcast idea start? Who was there from the beginning? And then how did it officially become, the Combat Tomb podcast that went on for several years and had on probably 100 different guests over the years?
It started off, I think, like a podcast is something me and 16-bit had in mind, like, but neither one of us really knew how to do it.
Yeah.
Like, we both would tell each other, like, oh, we'll learn how to do it, but we never did. And then K7 asked me to be on his podcast first, and like, he was super chill, he was super cool. I was like, maybe we can just ask this dude to run that part of it, and then we can kind of be like the dudes that he can rely on as far as fighting game expertise or something like that.
Sure.
And then 16-bit was his second guest. And then 16-bit like pretty much convinced him after that, hey, we'd like to be on all the time if it's cool with you. And he was like, sure. So it happened very organically.
All right. That's great.
And then as far as the format goes, again, that was pretty organic. We just went on. We were just being ourselves. K7 would do his intro. And me and 16-bit would just rant on things that we would see on Test Your Might. We would just be like, we had the sector community blow up, all the sector players raging about how bad their character was, and we would just every week we'd just be like, what are they talking about? The character is ridiculous. And it's just like, and then like we would rag on CD Junior and like other players that would just post stuff that would just test the validate. It would just test what the human it would test what humans are capable of. And we would just like, I remember one person would say on the forum, just duck down one cutter every time. You can just see it every time. And we would just be like, you can't just do that every time. Like, you have to just literally block something and just let go of block and hold down and hope that they're doing down one cutter half the time.
Yeah,
like,
and hope they don't do down one cutter, and then cutter hits you when you try to punish.
It was just like ridiculous, some of the things that we were seeing online. So, and just being a fighting game veteran and playing Tekken for, you know, like probably around 10 years at that point, I kind of knew the feasibility of what, you know, human reactions were capable of. People were saying you could react to Scorpion's 50-50 between his overhead and his low kick. And even though it's like a 1 frame difference, and like, oh, you can see it, you can hear him pull out his sword. And that's what that's how you can tell.
Dude, it's one thing to do it in training mode. It's one thing to do it in training mode or against somebody who doesn't know how to play, but in the heat of the moment, right? When it is, because a 50-50, like, that's not the only thing that's coming, right? It's not that Scorpion is going to go low or he's going to go overhead. It's not that. It's that he could also throw you, or he could cross over, or he could do down one into his leg tackle. And so, yeah, if you are in the Neo headspace of looking for low overhead, then maybe you can get that kind of reaction. But people don't take into account that means that you're not ready for anything else.
Right. You only have so much mental bandwidth while you're playing. Mm-hmm. When you're playing in training mode, if you're using all of your mental bandwidth to hyper focus on this scenario, and you're able to get it down 100% of the time, once you start going in an actual fight, you know, there's a lot of other things you're worrying about. You're looking at your meter, you're looking at his life bar, you're looking at their life bar, you're looking at the situation. I mean, there's all types of things you got to factor. Your screen positioning, if you're in the corner, if you're not, like, you know, stuff like that. But yeah, like, and there's just certain things that you can do. So I think why people think they could see it, and there's only a 1 frame difference, and like one of them was 17 frames, another one was 18 frames. And for the people out there that don't play fighting games, the threshold for human reactions in a fighting game is around like 21 frames. Like anything over 21 frames, and even that is pushing it. It's like, it's pretty hard to react to, or at least be able to recognize that animation in time to block accordingly.
Right, and we're talking frames per second. We're talking frames per second, 60 frames per second. So a move that comes out in 20 frames is coming out in a third of a second, and you're being asked to react to that in the middle of a fight. And it's, you know, it's easier said than done, especially when you're talking about human reaction threshold.
Yeah, and well, another thing I had to. So first, I had to explain that, and then you have to explain how people are able to fuzzy guard. Well, they're like, well, there's a 1 frame difference here. How come I'm blocking in 100% in this training mode? So then you have to explain fuzzy guarding, and fuzzy guarding is a timing of. I know the timing to block high all the way up until this point, and then you block low. And so it's not that you're recognizing the animation, you just understand that there is a very fine timing, there's a very nuanced timing in that mix-up.
Yeah.
And that can be done, but there's very different ways to disrupt that. Like if you do a jump punch into the overhead, yeah, you can block the overhead and then duck just in the very last frame to block the lower. Maybe it was vice versa, something like that. But you can throw that off by just, you know, not chaining it together after the jump punch, or just slightly,
a small delay,
or just slightly delaying one of them to get them off of that fuzzy guard. You know, I'm putting air quotes in the air.
I would do that all the time. I did that all the time with Quan Chi and MK9, because he had the low starter into that overhead punch, right? And the thing is, it was easy to block. Once you block low, you block high, right? And so after a jump in punch, people would block low and then they block high because they're ready to block that 50-50. So you just stop for a moment and then do it. And their muscle memories, they're already blocking low and then high. So when they block high, now I'm starting the low, right? There's always ways around it.
Right. So I mean, and then you throw that in there, and then what you do, like you just said, you know, sometimes just throw, sometimes they're just going to pressure and just, you know, do like a jab pressure and try and do chip damage. Like, you don't always know they're going to go for that 50-50. You don't always know what they're going to be thinking or what they're going to be doing, because they know what you're thinking. If someone's blocking my 50-50 all the time, I mean, I'll just be like, all right, well, I got to get them off of that, right? I'll start throwing, or like I said, I'll start doing other stuff just so you stop thinking about it. And then when I really need it, that's when I'll use it.
So you guys started this podcast, and I guess I'll kind of tell it from my side as a listener. I've always kind of had a thing with idolization of people I listen to, like any channel I listen to that I really like. I kind of see them as gods, as kind of like heroes. Like if I ever met like the angry video game nerd, I would freak out, or like just like anyone like that. So coming into the MK9 scene, like with my friends and us discovering, oh wow, there's a community. Oh wow, there's tournament. We didn't even know there were tournaments. We had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
And then listening to that the Silent One with Tom Brady weekly podcast where they talked about frame advantage, like this stuff was fascinating to us, and so of course these people became idols to us, and I kind of when I went from someone who no one knew to suddenly I was on that podcast talking to Tom Brady and talking about how I discovered that Quan Chi can whiff special moves in his trance to build 15% more meter, and suddenly he's got an extra rune trap and all that kind of stuff. And then I put out some videos on it. And
Yeah, I remember that.
I put out that video on how if you start with 1-1-2 trance and a combo, then you're able to build so much meter that you can steal their breaker from them and still build 3 rune traps. I remember, and I remember putting that out, and like I had these 2 moments where I was just kind of like starstruck. Where one was Devastation. It was I think that was the name of it. It was the Canada tournament of MK9 in like September or October of 2011. It was right after the dash nerf came out. I remember how upset Tom Brady was about that, and it was also the tournament where where the brackets were so screwed up, where Tom beat another Sub-Zero player twice in pools and then lost to him in pools. Like there was, yeah, like you were able to lose twice in pools and still make it into like this other category. And so
Yeah.
Tom beat this guy twice in pools, and then Tom lost to someone and then had to fight that guy and lost and was eliminated by someone he beat twice in pools.
Wow.
I've never heard of it happening since, but like that tournament was a disaster. I remember Shujinki Dink fighting against somebody on stream using Quan Chi, and he did the meter building stuff in combo, and I was just like sitting there from my bedroom as your normal scrub, and I was like, oh my god, my tech is being used by a tournament player on stream.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was just like, I was in shock. And then 16-bit was on commentary and said, oh, you see what he did there? Yeah, that's that stuff that Under the Mayo's talking about. And I was like, what the fuck? 16-bit knows who I am. And I was just like, like giggling like a little girl. And then it was like 2 months later when you and Bit were talking on the first or the second episode of the podcast you were doing, and Bit was talking about how much they loved that in MK9 everybody has their dirt, right? Like everybody's got something really gross that they can use, and and they mentioned that even Quan Chi, right? If Quan Chi gets in and he has a full bar, if he has full meter, he can steal the whole thing. And you said, even if he just has 1 bar, did you see that new video from Under the Mayo? That shit's insanity. I remember that so clearly. I just sat up in my bed. I was like, holy shit, this is great. And then 2 months later, I was guest number 12 on the KTP podcast. And I was just like, suddenly I felt like I was amongst all these heroes. Like I said, I have kind of an issue with idolizing the people that I follow in these scenes, and I've always just wanted to tell you that story. That's kind of how it was from my side of things.
No, I haven't. I didn't know that. I think we like to have people on that were doing the research and they were putting out good information. And so if like Quan Chi was considered low tier, there was all this talk about how bad he was, and I guess it ended up he is low tier, but I didn't want anyone to I didn't want the trend to just everyone just play the best characters. And
Sure.
These are the best characters. Everyone use these characters because I grew up, like I said earlier, with Street Fighter, and I remember stories about the U.S. versus Japan in Street Fighter 2 and Super Turbo. And I used to grow up, and I loved Street Fighter 2, but I was more of a Tekken guy, and I had no means of practicing it. I had to pick something. But I would hear stories about Jason Wilson and these shirts and these like old school Super Turbo players, and they were the best. And it was just like when I would watch their videos, the few that were out there of them playing, and they would be getting these reversal one frame uppercuts when they get up, which is really hard to do in Super Turbo and stuff. And I would just watch them. I'd be in awe. And there was just a consensus about matchups, like, oh, you don't want to go Blanca against Boxer, that's a bad matchup. Or you don't want to go Honda against Vega, that's a bad matchup. Like, there was just like a taboo, like, oh, you're going to lose because you picked this character versus that character. And that's just kind of how the way it was in the US. And then and then these top players got invited to Japan to enter a Street Fighter tournament. Or it wasn't just Street Fighter, but it was like a bunch of Capcom games. But we brought our best Street Fighter players there, and they got mopped up by these like character specialists in Japan that knew these matchups so well. Even the bad matchups weren't bad to them. And I always stuck to that. I always kept that in mind, and I didn't want the NRS scene or MK9 to fall into this toxic, not toxic, but just a bad frame of mind of you pick this character and then you just counter with that character, and that's the end of the line. And I always just hung on to like, we've been wrong as a whole country about this before. Like you should. And so I always wanted to advocate, pick the character you like and really dive into them. And when you brought out that video and everyone's saying Quan Chi sucks, and that video came out, and I was like, here we go, like where everyone's saying this character's bad, and this character might actually be amazing, and like we don't really know. Like look at this video this dude just put out, like, and you watch it and you're just like, what's really that? Is he really that bad? Like, let's have this guy on and have him talk about it. Like this is some cool stuff. Like this is the stuff that we need to keep exploring, and not just everyone just say this character sucks or that character sucks, this matchup's bad, and no one actually ever explores it. Like let's promote as much diversity as we can.
Yeah, that was a really, really fun podcast. It was like a 4-hour conversation that we all had, not just about Quan Chi, but about all kinds of stuff. Do you remember that initial wave of like the Quan Chi scourge, like right after my first videos came out, where like suddenly there was like an influx of thousands of people playing Quan Chi?
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
And I remember like Pig of the Hut was like in like full rage mode about Quan Chi, and then he used Quan Chi on a tournament, and it's like and like,
well, that's another thing too. It's like as a tournament player, you want to know what dirt these characters can do. You don't want to you don't want to spend $500-800 to travel to a tournament across the country, and then you fight a Quan Chi player, and under the Mayo never thought about making a video about it because he heard Quan Chi sucks, and so then you fight some Quan Chi who's doing it to you, and you're like, what in the world is that? Like, so there's just it's just always great to put the information out there for everyone to learn. I always just had the approach of like, let's everyone learn this game. Let's everyone find out, as a whole community, as a country. I was back then, it was like a lot of like, regional rivalries, and then,
I missed
like
that stuff.
Capcom scene, like, there was international rivalries and stuff like that. So I went it with that approach. Like, let's all like, as a whole community or as a country, like let's all really get really good at this game.
You've got to miss it, right? I mean, I miss those local rivalries. Like, I feel that's just something that we don't really have anymore.
Yeah, online kind of.
It's all online, and it's all like individual personalities now, and like there's no, like I miss like GGA versus what was VCM, or what was it? Valley Stream at VSM, and then there's like Florida, and there's Texas, and there's the California scene, and there was the where Pig and Fly were, and there was just like, there was drama, there was like serious drama, but there was also like a serious talent respect, but there was a lot of shit talk, and like it was a big deal when like someone from this region went up against this region in a major. And like everyone was hype about it, and like the podcast, like KTP the week before with you guys like running down like, okay, in this pool we've got him versus this person, and like predictions and talking about this guy did this, this guy said this 2 months ago, like it's like it's gone now. I mean, not just because we're in a pandemic.
Really good about that. That was he was. They were really good about that. Like just coming up with, just going through the brackets and. They would just know everything about those players and their history. They were just really, really, really good about their tournament history, who they've lost to, who they've beaten. So 16-bit was just a huge asset to the podcast as far as that goes. He really
absolutely.
They really went into it like wow, like a announcer like on Sports Center that has the stats like scrolling, but just in 16-bit's mind. Had it all. It was amazing.
It was exciting. I always put those podcasts on my little MP3 player and just sat on the bus and spent an hour and a half just like listening to what's waiting for this week at final round or whatever tournament it was, or Frosty Faustings.
Well, everyone, I mean, those regions, they only played against each other, so you knew that talent pool was a conglomerate of that region of people playing against each other, because I mean online was just an atrocity. And then I think now fighting games are kind of in this gray area where it's feasible to play online, but it's still not precise,
right?
But it's not good enough for people to not want to play online. So it's like people are forced to play online. It's like you take a look at the Tekken scene now, like most people play Tekken online now. And then Pakistan a couple years ago came out of nowhere and just blew everyone away. And everyone was like, Pakistan? Like, what on earth are they eating in Pakistan? And you find out that they're just not playing online. All they do is play offline. They have old school arcades. And so they are literally able to play to the frame. They can train their reactions to play to the frame through all that fuzzy guarding I was talking about, where you can train your brain to be able to have a defense that is almost frame perfect, and only if you have experience fighting against that will you know how to beat it. So the Pakistanis were just playing on a different level because they weren't playing online at all. And I think it wasn't until they started that Arslan Ash won 2 back-to-back Evos, I think, or 2 back-to-back majors or something, which hadn't been done in a long time. I think that kind of woke up Korea and Japan, like, oh man, we really need to start playing online again. And it feels like that now, even in all the fighting games. Like I'm in a group chat with some Tekken friends, and I just started raging in the group chat one day. I was like, back in the day, I would be frame perfect on, like, I would not get a knockdown, and that I would need to be frame perfect to run up and put this meaty on top of you, or put this move on top of you as you're getting up. But because of online, I can't even practice. I can't even practice it. I can practice it, but there's no point in practicing it because I can't do it online. Yeah. So it's just, we're in this weird spot with fighting games right now, or that's like they're my favorite fighting game to play, but it's just like it hurts me to not be able to play optimally anymore, because you're always just kind of hovering around this like 4 to 5 frame,
like a fluctuation of like, is it 4 frames or is it 9 frames?
It's like if it's offline, I can play to the frame every time. I don't have to think about this. But when you play online, it's like, oh, this connection's kind of janky. I don't know. Let's not even try it now.
How did you go from tournament player to working for NetherRealm Studio?
That was 16-bit, just kind of getting in good with the devs there. Like I said, they traveled and just had a good communication. 16-bit was getting good with Hector Sanchez, and just in a stream chat, I think Hector was in a stream, and so was 16-bit, and just kind of half joking, they said, "Hey, if I move to Chicago, can I get a job there?" And Hector was like, "Yeah," and he did it. Moved there, got the job, and I was like, keep me in mind. Like I think we were still doing the podcast. He might have had to stop once
Yeah,
they got
that's right.
hot.
16-bit moved off, and you brought on an M2 Dave for like an hour or something.
Yeah.
I don't really remember much after that.
But yeah, and then just over time, like once another spy opened up, 16-bit called me up, was like, "Yo, let's do it." I was like, "All right, I'm on board."
So what did that entail? Were you just like getting builds of the game and testing out things, or did you have any creative input? Did you get more responsibilities over time?
It was started. We were QA, so quality assurance. So our job was to find bugs, but it became pretty apparent that there weren't like tournament player testers there. They were there to find like, animation bugs or economy
Sure.
bugs or, UI bugs and stuff like, some obvious gameplay bugs. But there was like, I remember just the first day just looking at Bane and just all these moves, just all these characters just low profiling, like a lot of his moves. And now it's just like, oh man, a lot of people are gonna hate that. And then that was the first thing I did. I just combed through the whole cast and just made sure all of their moves were able to hit all the smaller characters. Because if you've played fighting games, like you'll fight against like a little girl or whatever, or like a small sprited character, and your moves will go through them sometimes just because they're so small and like it just infuriates you. And MK9 had a little bit of that, so I knew to look out for that. So that was one thing to search for, and then just the type of bugs that we were logging. I think the developers were just like, oh, all right, these two are kind of on a different, like, they know just different things than these other testers. And so I think we kind of, they started listening to us more and more the more they found out, what we knew and stuff like that.
How did forward 2-3 breath make it through? All right.
Forward 2-3 breath. I knew forward 2-3 breath was good. Superman. Let's see. Well, we knew forward 2-3. We like the breath. We knew was advantage, but we didn't know that the breath. It was +2, but it
was
had
+2.
pushback.
No, it wasn't +2. It was like +27 or something. It was ridiculous. And then they nerfed it. And then they nerfed it to +7. And then like it gave him like one frame to give you one frame to get out or something like that. And you couldn't even armor it.
+2. I know, like day one patch, it was like a block infinite, and then the day one patch was supposed to get rid of that.
Yeah.
And I think after the day one patch, it was still like +2, but it didn't make much difference. Or maybe it was. I can't remember exactly.
It was
but
still pretty heavy because even by Evo, it was
it
like
was hard to
you could
deal
only
with
backdash.
Yeah, because even at +2, you would start your invincible backdash, right? The startup of a backdash is invincible. But he's at +2, so he would end up hitting the vulnerability of the backdash if you just barely delayed it. In some and the active frames on that forward 2 would sometimes hit it no matter what, and you had to like time the backdash. And you couldn't jump out of it. Like
whatever it was, you couldn't even armor.
Oh,
you couldn't even armor back 3s.
Yeah. But that
Unless
was
you were Catwoman.
Superman we didn't look at right away because the testers came in and Tom Brady was looking at Superman. So we were like, well, let's just have Tom Brady handle that.
Okay, yeah.
And then Tom Brady was like, Superman doesn't have any mids. And then he was like raging about it so much that I started looking at Superman. Cause I was like, is he right? And then I knew like forward 2-3 was really good. I didn't cancel on the breast, but I was like, just forward 2-3 alone. I was like, this is amazing. Because forward 2-3 was like -2. Like you had to check him with a duck jab, just forward 2-3. So the breath, I didn't even connect breath yet. I was just like, just forward 2-3 alone is an amazing move, and his air lasers are out of control too. Like
they were.
So I mean, we were telling the devs before the game came out, like Superman was probably the best in the game just because of his air lasers and forward 2-3.
Yeah, like.
And then the breath on top of that was like, oh, that's even more broken than I thought.
And then trait,
Yeah, and the trait cancel, yeah. He's such a cool character.
Sure.
Yeah, he was definitely broke.
So, how long did you stay there? Like, how many games did you work through, and what are you dedicating yourself to now?
As far as QA, I was really just QA for Injustice, and I ended up having to move back to St. Louis.
Okay,
But they did call me back in to do like a two week balance testing with the other game testers for MKX and Injustice 2. So I wasn't like a QA person for those games, but I did
sure.
help out with the balance. So we went in for like a couple weeks. They had much of the game done, and it was just like the me and the typical guys that got called in, like Rio, Tom Brady, Chris G, um, Pig of the Hut got called in a couple times, I think. So that's and then so I gave my input for MKX and Injustice 2 on those.
When you moved on, when you weren't formally doing testing there, um, what have you gone on to do? I mean, whether you want to tell me like employment wise or gaming wise, like what are you doing in these post Tekken, post tournament, post NRS testing years?
Let's see. Well, I did try MKX, but I wasn't feeling that game. Injustice 2, I did really enjoy that game, and I did enter some tournaments in that. I entered like a combo breaker. I think I got in the top like 25, I think. And I entered Evo in Injustice 2, and I made it out of pools. So I think I got in the top like 30 something. I can't, top 32 maybe. I don't
Nice.
remember exactly. And then after that, after Injustice 2, I tried MK11. Just wasn't really feeling it. So I've been kind of playing Tekken again. I've been jumping back into that.
Tekken Tag
Just been
2 or what's your game?
Tekken 7. I've
Tekken 7? Okay.
been playing a little more Tekken 7. Just trying to see, how good I was. If I can get back to how good I used to be. Still not quite there,
Those
but
old man reactions, they don't help.
it's. I mean, it's interesting because my first goal was to get everything that I had back, but then everything that I have may not be as applicable into Tekken 7. So I have to remember that I'm playing a new game. Even though this is Tekken, it's still a new game, so I'm having to relearn the things that I already know. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to rearrange some things that I do know just because it's a different game and some things don't apply, or it still applies, but I gotta backdash a little bit more, or I gotta sidestep a little bit more just because it's just a little bit different. So it's kind of like, if when you're young, you have like, say you have a warehouse and it's totally empty and you need to fill it with these boxes and it's full of, Mortal Kombat boxes. So you throw all the Mortal Kombat boxes in the warehouse and it's easy and you're like, wow, this is great. This is no problem. But then someone says, let's throw some Tekken boxes in there. We need to get out the Mortal Kombat boxes and throw Tekken boxes in there. Well, you're not just throwing Tekken boxes in there. You got to take all the MK9 boxes or Mortal Kombat boxes out, and so it just takes that much longer. And it's as you get older, you like when you want to learn a new game, you're like, oh, I gotta rearrange all this crap in my mind and eliminate this and put this in there instead. And so it's like a rearrangement of furniture as opposed to just having a vacant room for you to just put stuff in. That's kind of like the mental gymnastics that you have to do whenever you're like learning or relearning a game.
I can't play more than one game. I mean, MK is my thing, but like if I've been playing a lot of MK11, then if I try to play MK9, suddenly I just I completely forget what I'm doing. I can't readjust. I have to play it for a day before
It's
I can
hard.
actually do something. And I'm just an MK player. I was good with Catwoman in Justice 1. That's about it. I tried Street Fighter 5, but I just don't really like the game. I like Fang. I think Fang is awesome, but
Hmm.
I hated the charge move stuff. I'm a player that presses the buttons really hard. I'm a very tense player, and
Hmm.
so using the charge moves constantly and like mashing those buttons and holding them to get the roll motion, my thumb turned black after a
Yeah.
couple weeks from the
Uh-huh.
plastic. It was that bad. I called it
Yeah.
I called it my fanger because I played Fang. It's a pretty stupid joke, I know, but I had to stop playing. I was just like, I don't enjoy the game enough to punish myself like this.
Yeah, I'm a pad player, so I have played on sticks before, and I would have that problem where I would lean my I guess by my bottom part of my wrist, on the plastic, and kind of like you, I would just constantly be pushing on that, and I would just start developing this like lump on my lower wrist, and I was like, man, what the hell is that? And then I remember I watched Daigo play Street Fighter, and he held the joystick like a wine glass, kind of underneath with the pinky or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh. And he was like doing the dragon punches a lot easier and everything. I was like, oh, that's. And then that just totally changed my whole concept of being able to play Street Fighter on a stick. So it's amazing, like what little stupid thing that you're doing wrong that's preventing you from like learning sometimes. Not saying that you're not holding your stick right.
Right. No, of course.
But it's just like those like but that's the primary reason I wasn't really a stick player either, is I would be hurting myself, and it wasn't until I just told myself I'm not holding this. I got to hold the stick in a different way in order for not hurt myself. But that's crazy. Yeah, it's hard to play multiple fighting games. It's really hard. You have to play them both. If you're gonna play two games, you got to play both of them pretty much almost every day, or at least every other day. That's why I was like envious of like the Justin Wong, like the Mount Rushmore fighting game people, Justin Wong, Chris G,
just
Sonic.
Pick up whatever game and just be fine at it.
Just to go to a tournament and win one game, like I would be happy. But these were the types of players that were winning multiple games, and I was like, how is someone that's not, they're going up against people who are totally dedicated to playing those games full time, and they would still beat them, and it would just that would infuriate me if I ever, like, I played Justin Wong a couple times in Tekken, and now it's like, there is no way this dude is beating me. This dude just plays Tekken for fun. I cannot lose to this guy. So, like,
it's demoralizing. But I mean, in a way, it's also like an honor, but it still sucks.
It lets you know that there's another level, but it's also good to know what, if you dedicate yourself. And I mean, I never lost to Justin Wong in Tekken, but I mean, he did get games, and that was enough to just be like, Jesus, man. Yeah. Like, that's scary stuff.
A good amount of the people on my YouTube channel who are going to be listening to this are big fans of the Doom series, and I would love to make a shift here and get your thoughts on the Doom series, and in particular Doom Eternal, which I know that you have played and you have some thoughts on. So where do you want to start? You want to talk some classic Doom, or do you want to jump right into Doom Eternal and give me your thoughts?
I'll give you my history on Doom. I was not allowed to play Doom as a kid. It was like too satanic. I grew up in like a Catholic, very strict Catholic family.
It was a big deal. That and Mortal Kombat, like those two.
I was allowed to play Mortal Kombat though. I think they knew how much I loved it, and they weren't going to stop me. And it was better to just let me play Mortal Kombat. Doom was more like, that game looks kind of fun, but they knew they could convince me to not play it. But I remember just looking at the art. And I was just like, I remember seeing the art for Doom 2, and like, that dude just blasting down at all those demons and stuff below him. And I'm like, wow, like that is intense. Like this dude is fighting against hell and demons, and like that is some intense shit. And I always wanted to play it. But I never actually did. And then when Doom 2016 came out, I was like, I gotta play this one. I'm a grown-ass man now.
Okay, so you had this admiration for the game, but you never played it. Like, all this time, you never played any of the original Dooms?
I played, GGA Jeremiah, when I was his roommate. There was like a weekend I came up there, and he had me play Doom 3. And that was kind of like a survival horror type.
Yeah, that's like the black sheep of the series.
Yeah, and that was fun, and that was actually pretty fun because I was a huge Deep Space fan. And that, like, when I played Doom
Dead
3,
Space?
I saw, Dead Space.
Okay.
And when I was playing Doom 3, I was like, man, like a lot of the things in Dead Space was stolen from Doom 3, and so I liked Doom 3. I thought it was
Cool.
pretty cool. Like, but I understood how the old games played was a lot of run and gun, and like you just keep moving around and shooting. So I
Sure.
understood why people didn't like Doom 3, even though I liked it, because it was you could tell it wasn't whole, just watching videos of Doom 1 and 2 and then seeing Doom 3, you could tell like why people would be upset. It's like it's a totally different game.
Sure.
So when I played Doom 2016, I was like, oh my god, they nailed it. Like this is exactly like
Yes.
they just absolutely just hit it out of the park. They just totally recaptured the original Doom with amazing updated graphics, and then some with cooler weapons and stuff like that. So when I played Doom 2016, and what was crazy is everyone had told me that it was amazing. Like I had a couple friends that were like, "This is my game of the year," and I was like, "Damn, are you serious?" And then one day I finally I was like, I think it was maybe after I got done with Injustice 2, I was like, I'm gonna play, or maybe I don't know, I can't remember exactly when, but I remember playing through it and I was like, wow, this is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's a roller coaster, man. Especially if you haven't, if you're not even familiar with like that style of shooter, which a lot of modern players they weren't. I've met. I've been to parties where I start talking to someone and they mention games and we mention shooters and then someone will say, hey, you know what game I played recently that I love? It's this game called Doom. You know what Doom is? I'm like, yeah, I know what fucking Doom is. What are you talking about? and because they're the only
It's an
thing they
American
know.
classic.
Yeah, the only thing they know is Call of Duty and Halo and Gears of War.
Mhm.
That's all they know. And then
Mhm.
suddenly they're playing a game where they can't hide behind a box and snipe half the enemies from all the way across the screen, and they can't recharge their shields by running away.
Mhm.
And suddenly they're just it's like their eyes have been opened to a whole other world that hasn't been around in a long time, and
Yeah,
now it's like,
that's what we grew up with.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
the old school Dooms, like I mean, when you got hurt, and you weren't gonna get better until you found some power ups or a first aid
Hmm.
kit or some potions or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, first person shooters have come a long way, especially I mean multiplayer FPS is one of the funnest things I've ever played. I could sit down and play Call of Duty. I have to tear myself away from playing Call of Duty because it's so fun. But you're right. Like when I first started playing Call of Duty, I was mentioning this earlier. I was a camper. Like I was just like, man, I'm lucky if someone passes by me and I shoot them in the back without, and them just turning around, making a jump, and doing a 360 or 180 and just blasting me in the head. And so, yeah, and Doom just. So yeah, if everyone's playing Call of Duty, like everyone's kind of doing, they're just running around. They're not really sure what's going on. But Doom like really forces you to run and gun. Like it forces you to just play at a fast pace,
Yeah.
like as fast as you possibly can. Because I would play Call of Duty, and if I got one kill, I would just be like, "Oh, I did it." Or if I got two kills in a row, like there would be a lapse, like a mental lapse. Even now, if I take down two or three guys, I'm like, "Ooh, that was nice." I'm like, blew those guys' backs out, and then a fourth guy would come, and I wouldn't even like. I would just be so out of it just because I was just getting over the rush of killing those three dudes. But in Doom, it's just constant. It's like 15-minute battles sometimes of just, oh my god, and your hair is just like flying through, like it's like you're going a million miles an hour. Your eyes are bulging. You're just constantly looking around. You're like, keep moving, keep moving. And
Yeah.
like a big demon, whatever those big ones are that do the big giant leap, and then the shockwave comes at you. I think they're just Hell Knights or whatever.
Hmm.
And then there's this. They all have like a different attack, and they all require you to use a different movement patterns. But you always got to keep your eye out. You always got to keep your surroundings. You got to be weapon swapping. It was like the perfect training for Call of Duty. Like if you haven't played Call of Duty, or if you're a Call of Duty player and you're like very slow paced and you like to camp or whatever, and you would like to figure out if you would like to find your inner run and gun. God, is there a better training system than Doom? And it's so fun. It's just so fun too. So
And yeah, that all branches to Doom Eternal. Doom Eternal is like the ultimate shooter training game, right?
yeah,
Like
Doom Eternal even more so.
I like I've been playing a lot of Prey. I don't know if you played Prey from 2017. It's like this kind of space shooter game with aliens, and uh, I've been going back and I'm playing it recently, and I'm playing it so much better now, like because I'm
Hmm.
starting to think about the synergy of all my attacks. I'll see an
Right.
alien and I'll be like, okay, I won't just run up to him and do alien shock and shotgun. I'll do alien shock and then freeze him, and then do a shotgun and then a stun attack, and then step back and throw a grenade at his foot. Like I'm starting to think in that sort of
Right.
like using the utility of every weapon, and like
Exactly.
it's crazy. It's really affected the way that I see other games as well, because there's other shooting games that I love. Like, have you played Dusk?
I have not.
You know, it's a new shooter from 2018, but very like indie style, and very kind of old school Quake style, and
Uh-huh.
really fun. I absolutely love the game. And now that I've been playing Doom Eternal so much over the past few months, I've got, I think, 418 hours in the game already. I try to go back and I play Dusk, and suddenly I'm not really enjoying it as much as I did, because suddenly I realize, hey, I'm just running around with the super shotgun the whole time, and all the enemies are kind of dumb. Right? It's like Doom Eternal has it is kind of spoiled me because of how aggressive the AI is, how smart they are,
Hmm.
how the game really sells you on all of its mechanics. That, like, you know, you don't have to use grenades, but grenades have a very useful mechanic to stagger the enemies, to give you an opportunity to get in close.
Oh yeah.
Like there's so much built. Um, does Doom Eternal remind you of a fighting game?
Oh, a fighting game.
Because we've talked about that a lot on our podcast, because I have the podcast with Ketchup, and
Ah,
we talk a lot
that's an
about it
interesting.
because you, like the weapons are all like, they all have really interesting utilities that almost like different special moves and normals of a fighting game. The that you want to deal with different enemies with different measurements of spacing. You never want to stand still. The Marauder, you know, like his holding up that shield and waiting for his attack and using a counter, like it feels like a fighting game in as a first person shooter. I was curious
I,
if that has occurred to you.
I can agree with that. I think Doom Eternal is just so well done. The real question is there a fighting game that really like matches that? Because like you said, like all that, because I played through Doom Eternal just like one playthrough, and I was really disappointed that I had to like stop because I had to play something else. But like you said, like I could just tell the synergy between all the weapons. I was like, man, there's so many different cool combos that I could do if like, if I was better at this, and I really
Yeah,
wanted to get that good. And then I remember actually watching one of your videos, and I saw you playing, and I was like, yep, that's all the things that I thought you could do in my head. You can looks like you can do, and then some. And so I was I would say, like, if it's gonna be a fighting game, it has to be a fighting game where, I mean, all the characters have good utility and they all have their own thing and they're all effective. And there's not a lot of fighting games. I would say ST, I mean, that's a high praise.
sure.
But I think ST is like one of those games where all the character diversity and the way they play is very, very different, but they're all actually pretty damn good and they're all very deadly. And so I think, Doom Eternal's like that too, because all of the weapons are pretty damn good in the right situation. It just
Yeah,
depends on if you can get them in the situation that you want them to optimize the gun that you want to use.
right.
And so, I
And
mean, yeah,
in any game, there's always going to be weapons that are better, right? Just like a fighting game, there's always going to be
right,
characters that are better,
exactly,
right?
yeah,
And
exactly.
once you dominate the game systems, then you can figure out the certain tools that you can rely on, right? And I think the test of a game's longevity is that the things that are are not the easiest to rely on also provide their own unique and interesting benefits and motivation and fun to use them. right?
Hmm.
Because like I'm building play styles that are based on basically like grenade falters plus the full auto shotgun and
Yeah,
remote.
I was
And
watching one of your videos,
it
and yeah, go ahead.
it no, and it's just fun. It's fun, but there's also like reason to use it, and like I'm sure you could always pick the strongest weapon and run around with that. But it's nice when when using other weapons isn't just for fun, but because there's an actual like utility and benefit to it that you can build a play style around. And that's something that I found in Doom Eternal that I just haven't found in other games.
I just think it's cool because, like, in Doom Eternal, a lot of the fight is going to depend on the enemy, and a lot of the fight is going to depend on your ammo too. And
Yeah,
so it's like you could be really good with the best weapon in the game, but you're not always going to have the ammo for it.
sure.
Or you get so you could develop a play style where you always have ammo for it. You know, if you're good with the chainsaw, or maybe you're good at stalling for the chainsaw to recharge, and then you use it, and then you get your ammo back. Or but I mean, there's going to be plenty of scenarios where you don't have the ammo for that, and you got to be good with other weapons. A lot of times, those other weapons are just as good. You just don't know how to use it, or it's just as good in that scenario at the very least. And so the fact that you can have so many different play styles in that game is just crazy to me. I was watching you play, and the way you were using the meat hook, like, just to get close to people, and you would just use it to get close to people and not even use the shotgun.
Right.
I was like, oh my God. I was like, that's brilliant. And I was like, just use the shotgun grappling hook just to get close and then switch a weapon. I was like, holy I was like, that is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, you'll
And so,
see.
like, I mean, you might not even have ammo for that shotgun, but it's still got a huge utility. And I was
Exactly.
like, I wonder how many other weapons are like that. Like, that's cool.
Yeah, like you'll see, you'll suddenly find yourself with 3 mancubi in front of you, and you'll just say no, and then you'll meat hook onto one of them, and as soon as you hit the meat hook, like you jump and look up, and you just swing yourself up in the air, and so
Yeah, that is crazy.
you just fly over them. You're like, I'm getting out of here.
You're like a ninja. It's so cool.
And then there's ballista boosting. Have you seen that?
No, what's that?
You know the ballista, right? The laser crossbow thing.
Yeah, that's cool.
Well, like speedrunners can, or you don't have to be a speedrunner. Some people just use it in the way they move around. If you, I'm not quite sure how it works. I think it's based on player momentum, but like I think if you're going forward at full speed and then you do a quick 180 turn and shoot the ballista and then switch back, like it gives you a speed boost forward.
Really?
Yeah, because the ballista pushes you back a little when you shoot it. And so if you're already moving
Wow.
forward and then you spin around and shoot it behind you, you're propelling yourself forward even more. And so like there's all kinds of cool little tricks like that.
Wow.
Like old
That
school
is
Quake
cool.
rocket jumping.
See, that's the little stuff that's so fun. That's the little stuff that players find, and those, like, shades of gray of, did the dev really mean for it to be like this? And if not, like,
Well,
it's like kind of like it's like the players, like, little gem that's like they're like, this is ours. Like, we
Yeah.
found this. And this is super cool.
there was the Gauss cannon, the equivalent of the ballista in 2016. That one had a much bigger boost, and so speedrunners used the Gauss cannon to boost out of the level, basically, and
Oh,
they would just
really?
be out. If you ever want to laugh, go look up like Doom 2016 world record speedrun, and it's like 22 minutes or something, and players just like launch themselves out of, like, they climb up walls with the Gauss boost facing down. There's an issue with high frame rate where if you stand on a railing, like at a certain pixel, and your frame rate's over like 200 frames per second, and you jump, the game swings you up into the air, and you can jump over an entire level in 20 seconds. It's called rail boosting, I think. There's all kinds of crazy stuff like that. Yeah, and that stuff isn't intended, but the fact that there is ballista boosting in Eternal, after the Gauss cannon boosting existed in Doom 2016, they must have known about it, and they must have
So
kept
that's
it
like
in.
a nod. That's
They
like
must
a
have
nod.
been
that
like, yeah,
it's a
okay, we're gonna
thing.
let you ballista boost, and like you don't put in something like the meat hook without expecting players to find crazy ways to fly over fights and out of bounds and stuff like that. Like they had to have known. It's part of the plan.
Oh yeah. I think that's got to be super exciting as a dev whenever you see like a player base like really dive into your game and find all these crazy things that you didn't even think about. And then that just fuels the fire whenever you're working on your new game. Like they're like kind of bouncing ideas that they've found on your game, and you can use the ideas that they found to help you with your new game. And it feels like, they probably did a little bit of that with Doom Eternal.
So, we've talked about MK, we've talked about Injustice, we've talked about Tekken, we've talked about Doom, we've talked about your jobs in gaming. So why don't we expand a little more casually? What kind of movies are you interested in? What are your favorite films? What are the film mythologies and lore that you care about? What are some good films that you've seen lately that you might want to recommend? Tell me what's on your mind when it comes to that subject.
Oh, movies, man, that's
You got a top 5?
oh, for a long time I had a top five. For a long time I had a top five, and I believe it consisted of Aliens was my number one movie for a long time.
In my top 5. Got it.
Such a great movie. Seven was in my top five. I remember that.
All right.
Rocky 2 was in my top five. Fist of Legend, like Jet Li, that was an absolutely amazing movie. I think it's at four.
That's 4.
A fifth, man. There's just so many good movies. Yeah, I mean, you can't just go wrong with something like Jaws or
Yeah. Or Empire.
yeah. I mean, I'm more of an action guy. I like action, but like it's got to stay within the realm of feasibility.
Predator.
Predator, an absolutely amazing movie. God.
Robocop.
I can't believe
Terminator.
how good Robocop, all those are absolutely amazing movies.
You were gonna say you can't
Terminator
believe.
1, Terminator 2. Say that again.
You were gonna say you can't believe something about Predator.
Well, I was actually looking up the history on that, and they were saying in the box office in the movie theaters it didn't do that good because they thought it was just going to be another like Arnold Schwarzenegger just action movie.
Yeah.
Like people were kind of getting worn out on the action hero stuff.
And it turns out it's his best one.
God, and it's just like over the years, like people would watch it and they were just absolutely floored. Like I remember being a kid and just watching it, and they do such a good job of hiding what the Predator is. You're just like, what the hell is that? You knew it was some kind of alien, but you didn't know what it was or you didn't know what was going on. And I remember watching it, and it was like stalking the Marines and everything, or the Green Berets, like Arnold and his crew. And I was watching it over at a friend's, and my friend dad, we were asking my friend's dad, like, why doesn't the Predator just attack him? Like, what is he doing? He's just like, well, he's stalking them. He's he's just waiting for the perfect time to try and take them all out. Kind of how you would hunt a deer or how you would hunt like a squirrel. Like he's hunting them for sport. And I was like, that concept, like, I was like, wow. I was like, there's an alien that's doing that to humans. Like as a human and as a child, you don't really think about that. Like what if there's like, a species, a humanoid species that's even greater than us that hunts us for fun, like how we hunt like deer or whatever or game for fun, like that whole and how would we handle it, and how sophisticated would that alien have to be? And that's what that whole movie was exploring, and it was just such a cool concept. And,
It
like,
really
the
was.
whole thing,
That's
it would
why
have
you're
to
able.
have,
That's why you're able to put it in so many other mythologies. That's why you have Predator versus Batman, and Predator versus Wolverine, and Predator versus
Right.
Alien, and Predator versus Judge Dredd. I read that comic book. Like it's like if you have this hunter from space that wants a good fight, then it could fight anything.
and it's just weird. Like it's hard to actually conceptualize that thing that would be able to hunt humans for fun. Because it's like as humans, like we're the most powerful things that we know of, and so to try and think about like what would it take to take down humans outside of just a natural thing that humans can't do anything about, like that's just a fascinating thing. It's just we oftentimes we would think an alien race would come down and just try and take over the Earth and take over our resources, like an Independence Day type thing.
Yeah.
So the concept of an alien just hunting us for fun, like that's
or
crazy.
it come down as just a wild monster that just kills things, right? And that's what made it so interesting, because it wasn't just killing to kill. You see in Predator 2, he won't kill the cop because she's pregnant. Like there's like what's the honor in that? There's more to it. They're like samurais in ways.
Well, it's like it makes you puts the perspective of what do deer think about us? Do deer envy us, or do they fear us? Kind of like, because I don't look at a predator and fear predator. I look at the predator and I'm like kind of just like admirable of it. It's just like, I wonder if deer think that we're there. Do they admire us? And that was one of my KTP questions, I think, was I think we were just doing a change of pace. Now it's like, if aliens came down and they just started harvesting us like cows, but they really expressed that they really needed us, and harvesting us, as humans, like really helps them lunge them into the cosmic plane, and it really helps them expand to the universe. So we're actually playing a role in their expansion, and then they really need us. It's like, is that how cows think? And like, so I was like, yeah, that was my KTP question. Like, if aliens came down and just started harvesting us, and we clearly didn't have a shot, they clearly outclassed us, would we eventually just accept it, like all the other animals do?
And I already have 16 bits response. What the fuck are you talking about?
You're just talking about Sector's 8-frame jab. Now you're talking about
what are you talking about? So many good conversations there. I know there's got like a best of compilation out there that's like 4 hours or something. I've never listened to it. But
is there really?
I think there is. I'd have to look it up.
That's crazy. People still listen to it.
There must be. I think on a hard drive I've got like a few of the hard MP3s on there of like some of my favorite episodes. But what is it? Combat Tomb Podcast Best of. There's got to be something on here. Well, okay. There's a few things up here. Like Evo Special 2015. There's some episodes up there, but I don't see any best ofs. But I know there's got to be something out there.
Yeah,
I thought about doing it myself.
Every once in a while in the FGC or in the Mortal Kombat community, someone will just bust out one of those questions, and it's just like, wow.
I know you're a big Star Wars guy. What's your thoughts on the latest trilogy?
Nah, Star Wars is done to me.
It's done for you. Dead. I only remember you talking one thing about Star Wars on KTP, where you talked about how you felt that the midichlorians thing ruined the Force, because now if it feels like that what you liked about the Force, and stop me if I'm characterizing this wrong, but I think I remember you saying that as a kid, what you liked about the Force was that it felt like if you had the belief, if you had the strength, and the talent, and you trained and you put yourself on the right path, that the Force was something that like you connected to, and that the whole midichlorians thing and about like people being born special just kind of ruined it for you, because it felt like the Force isn't something that you find. You don't become special due to how you work and how you live. You're born special, and fuck everyone else. Like you said something that was like that, and that really always just stuck with me.
Yeah, the prequels, that was one of the things I didn't like about it. I mean, it didn't bother me at first, but it was just like over time, like it was like that did kind of ruin the mystery of it. The fact that anyone maybe could be strong with the Force. When Darth Vader was about to shoot down Luke Skywalker in the first movie, and he was just like, wow, the Force is strong with this one. And it was just like, wow, like that's pretty cool. And he was training in the Force. Obi-Wan had been training him. Yeah. And it was like Darth Vader could just feel it, like, oh, the Force is strong with this one. You didn't know like that was Darth Vader's son.
Yeah.
And you didn't, and then that was fine. It would find out that that's Darth Vader's son. And you're just like, oh wow, that just made it more feasible that he could actually take Darth Vader down. But yeah, when the prequels came out with the midichlorians, it was just like, so so your potential is already determined. Whereas in the previous trilogy, it was just like, your potential is however potential you want it to be. Like, you just be as good as you can, and you don't worry about what some midichlorian count is or what some blood sample says about you. You just do you and don't worry about that information and just do what's the best. So that was one thing. But I mean, the new trilogy for me was just I couldn't get past Last Jedi. I didn't even watch the Rise of Skywalker.
Really?
Like Last Jedi it just destroyed everything, and I was just like, well, I'm done then.
Yeah, they're not great. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan myself. I like the first movie. I like Star Wars. I don't call it A New Hope. I call it Star Wars. And The Empire Strikes Back is a good movie too. And Return of the Jedi is kind of dumb and silly, but it's not bad, and it's got some good stuff in it, and it's enjoyable. And then from there, I'm like, okay, that's it. I don't enjoy the prequels at all. I don't watch any of the side spin-off stuff. People tell me that I need to watch the 7 seasons of Clone Wars. No, I'm not. No. I'm not into Star Wars enough to do that. And so the new movies was kind of like Force Awakens. I was like, hey, this is pretty fun. This feels like a Star Wars movie. It's it's got issues, but that was fun, wasn't it? Like that was all I thought of it. And then from there, it was I saw The Last Jedi, and I was like, I was mostly just bored by it. I wasn't as upset about continuity stuff or character stuff. It was just kind of like I'm just not into this. And
the story was just so whack.
Yeah, it was all over the place too.
This is a bad movie.
The casino planet and all the like prequel level of CGI creatures and
growing up, like the Empire was so cool. Like they had all the coolest vehicles. They had Star Destroyers, Death Stars, TIE Fighters that had that cool sound. And then like Empire, there's different models of TIE Fighters, and they have Super Star Destroyers, and then they had the Walkers in Empire, and then they had Chicken Walkers in Return of Jedi, and every movie was just like, God, the Empire is just so cool. And then with the whole thing with the prequels, everything, it's I don't know, like I've kind of forgot where I was going, but I just remember just wasn't as fun as it used to be. And like the prequels alone, I was like, dang, that sucked. That kind of sucked. And then these new movies were even worse. I was just couldn't believe it. But
on a production level and an acting, like directing, like they're better, but like at their core,
I remember what I was gonna say. So it's like, the first movie, Force Awakens, I love the Empire, I love their weapons, I'm a huge fan of their vehicles, and the first thing we see is that one lone X-Wing going in, just doing a Trojan horse, like, oh, I'm just here to talk, guys. And then he blows up the entire Super Star Destroyer by himself. I was just like, what? I was like, I've seen 6 Star Wars movies, and that's all they have to do to take out a Super Star Destroyer? Like, why did it seem like almost inconceivable in every other movie, and then this movie, they just wiped them out, and with one X-Wing? I was like, they could have taken out the Star Destroyer. Like, shouldn't they have taken that thing out way easier? Why did they need to take out that Star Destroyer that was barely working in Return of the Jedi? When they could have just taken out all those damn Star Destroyers, like, no problem. I don't know. It's just, right away, that movie just disconnected me. And then the movie just kept getting worse and worse. And yeah, the casino planet, then there was, God, man, don't get me started on this.
I'm sorry, Slips.
I hate that movie so much. And then they have those like bombers coming in to bomb those Star Destroyers
that was
are
awful.
like sitting there. And I'm like, they're just sitting there. I'm like, do they not see these big giant bombers coming at them? Can they not space fold? Like, can they move? Like, why can't they move? It was just everything about it. I was just getting more and more dumbfounded.
They're dropping bombs in a zero gravity space.
It was, and it just kept getting worse. Like the movie just kept, and then the X-wing pilot is fighting with the head of command or whatever, just for no reason. She won't tell him what's going on. She's just talking shit to him for no reason, and that prompts them to go to the casino planet because she won't listen to them, or they won't listen to reason, or there's just at least no explanation. There's no communication. So they go to this casino planet to try and devise their own thing to do, and that ends up wiping out the entire rebellion down to 30 people. Like this is terrible. Like where's the inspiration here? They just got their asses kicked.
The message of the movie is always listen to authority.
They died. They almost died doing that. It was just awful. I was like, what am I supposed to take away from this movie? Like, what lesson did I just learn other than don't be a fucking idiot? And I already knew that going into the movie. It was, oh my God. And after that movie, I was done. I couldn't even do it anymore. I didn't even want to watch the new one. It was just awful. And then they just kind of shitted on all the Star Wars before that too. I was like, yeah, I'm out. I'm out of this. I'm out of the game.
Well, I can't blame you. I went to see
even now, I am still upset that you can't find the original trilogy of Star Wars, like the original.
I know. Cuts. You have to steal it, right? There's no way to actually get it.
You always had this like watered down like kiddie version of the original trilogy, and it's just like, no, the trilogy that I saw was for teenagers, and it was about Han Solo being a freaking badass and shooting Greedo first, and you didn't know if Han Solo was a good guy or not when in the first movie. But nowadays, when you watch the special edition, because it's the only one that you can see now, it's clear Han Solo's gonna come at the end and rescue him because he's been a good guy the entire damn time.
The awful Jabba insertion into
that CGI has not aged well. Just take the whole damn thing out and put the original Star Wars back in, please. They
misled us so much because, I mean, like I said, I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, but I remember when that new version of A New Hope was released in theater. You remember that, right? It was a big deal. Star Wars is coming back into theater, but it was sold to us as like all new effects. How do they market it? They market it as like, look at this Death Star explosion with the shockwave. All right.
Yeah, that's right.
But people went to see it and they didn't know that they were actually going to be changing entire character traits. It was just, it was so bewildering.
Yeah. I remember the whole Greedo shooting first thing was like a big deal, like early on. And back then, like, you were just so happy that you were giving money to Lucasfilms, and if we showed enough support for these special editions that they remastered, that they'd probably work on a new trilogy. And it happened. And then the prequels came out, and it was like, oh, you just want money. I see.
I see.
Got it.
Oh, man. Well, Slips, this has been a really fun conversation. I'm really glad we got to do this. I don't know if there's anything else on your mind that you want to chat about. I mean, I could go on for hours. I love talking about this stuff, but I don't want to keep.
I'm surprised you didn't bring up Robocop and MK11.
I would love to talk about Robocop in any way. Well, here's the thing. I dropped MK11 last October.
Oh yeah.
I've only touched the game like a couple times when some training partners needed me to help them prep for a tournament. I go in with my Devora and I do my crazy shit, and then I go. I just don't enjoy the game. I've got serious problems with it. I love Devora. The buzzed Devora it's up there with MK9 Quan Chi for like how much I love the design, but the game that she's in, like when I lose, I feel angry, and when I win, I just kind of feel annoyed. Like,
I agree. There's a feel to that game where when I lose, I am mad pissed, man.
Yeah.
And I think it's like a lot of it comes down to just how powerful you are when you get knocked down. You just have got so many options. You're so powerful when you get knocked down that like just jumping out of a pressure situation to get on the ground is like a strat. And it's just weird. It's just weird.
I mean,
It's like a lot of the mechanics just don't synergize well. Like I think you're too powerful when you're on the ground. I think the breakaway, that thing it definitely got issues. That's so obnoxious that you can break away from a combo and get a combo yourself. That situation still exists, and it's just the breakaway has just been a disaster, I think.
Yeah,
fatal blows
are dumb.
They're annoying too.
There's the throws eating lows. Like I don't know how many times, like in a situation where like someone will come up and like on wake up you can down jab, right? Like you can wake up buttons if you want to, and it's valid against certain things. If someone comes in with a high attack, right? If they come in and they there's certain things you can do in that situation,
especially with all the delay wake, especially with the three different timings.
Of course, but the fact that someone can come up and grab me when I'm waking up, and if I press a low, like a down 1 or down 3, I'm at risk of their throw actually eating my animation. And I just don't understand the decision of letting grabs take people out of their active frames of low profile attacks. I don't get it. I don't understand the decision. I've never seen it in any other fighting game ever. And I know that that's not necessarily the best argument against a game mechanic just because you've never seen it before. But I don't know how many streams I've seen where like someone will walk up and go in for a throw while someone else is trying to space things out with a down 4, and their foot gets grabbed by a high grab. And like
it's a special high. I think all the MK games are like that though. Yeah, all the throws are special high,
but not nearly to this extent. I went into MK9 and I tried to like recreate this high grab catching a down 4 situation, and it was like once in a blue moon I could actually get it to happen. But in MK11 it seems to be like an intentional part of the game design, and it's I find it infuriating. And maybe you'll see where I'm coming from with this. I want to make a video talking about like how the game was in MK9 and how all the games were after. And I think one of the biggest issues with the games is the meter burn system, which started in Injustice. I don't like that you can perform a special move and then later trigger an EX version. Let's take Scorpion, right? Let's take Scorpion in MKX in MK11 and Scorpion in MK9. You had teleport, right? You had teleport or you had EX teleport, right? Your teleport, big combo on block, but your EX teleport was safe on block, right?
Right.
And you had to make that decision as a player. You had to say, I'm going to throw out regular teleport or I'm going to throw out EX teleport. And the player blocks, all right? And if the player blocks and sees that it was regular teleport, they punish. And if they block the EX teleport, they know that they can't punish. But in all the games after, now you as a Scorpion player are able to throw out teleport. And then if you see it's being blocked, meter burn it for the mix-up option. Right. And so now players, when they block a regular teleport, they don't know if they can punish that or not, because now you have the threat of burning it on block. Yeah. And that's across like the entire game design, where you block something and you don't know if you can punish that, because now not every, but so many specials on block are now mix-ups because of the meter burn possibility. And I find that just really, just unfun to play because mix-ups are mix-ups, great. Grab or punch mix-ups, right? Jump in, or teleport. Okay, yeah, that's a mix-up. But just someone doing a string or a jab into a special cancel, and then that special cancel could be meter burned or not, it makes everything a mix up, and I find it really annoying.
I think that's one of those things too, where offline doesn't translate to online very well. Because I'm sure if you're playing in an offline environment, you can get the timing down to where you can punish both every time. No problem.
Sure. But I mean that's teleport, right? But I mean, think of all the games that have come from Injustice on. There's a lot of attacks out there that have safe meter burn options, right? And I don't like that people can do an unsafe move and then in the moment decide, oh wait, let me just make this safe now because I see that he's blocking. I would rather people do their move and have to take the risk, right? And if you want to be safe, burn the meter when you do the move instead of doing the unsafe move and then making it safe later by burning the meter because you saw they blocked. I think I think that sucks. And it's been with us since Injustice.
It's a philosophical difference.
Yeah.
If it's done right, then I think I can see it working, but I can also see your point of view too, where it's just tedious and it's gonna be off-putting to players that are trying to learn, and they got to constantly be looking to see if you're meter burning or not. That's kind of annoying, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of my fundamental issues with it. But with Robocop, here's the thing. I haven't played it. I would like to download Robocop and just feel it out because Robocop's my favorite movie of all time. And
God, it's a good movie.
I watch it all the time. I always show it to new people. It only gets better. It only gets better with age. It really does. And I'm definitely going to do a video on it someday, but I don't know what my angle is going to be. It's going to be probably an hour-long analysis. But in MK11, I mean, it's amazing to see him there. And it's amazing that Peter Weller came back and did the voice, and that stuff's all great. Other than that, I don't know what to say about it. His fatalities are awesome. I think he's amazing, but I don't know how good he is. I don't even know what it's like to play him because I don't have the character.
Yeah, I heard he's not that good, but I mean, who knows? But he looks awesome. I love like his low gun shot. It looks like from the RoboCop arcade game almost, the way he does it.
The way that he holds his hand up in the air when he shoots, it's just so original movie RoboCop.
It's awesome. It's awesome. It's such a good movie. He's such a cool character. It's like if you could have a handgun, would you want any other gun besides RoboCop?
Oh, of course not.
God, what a great gun. My God, there's just nothing like it. It's like a machine pistol.
Yeah.
And it makes so much sense for RoboCop to use it because he's a robot. Of course he can control the recoil. He's strong as hell.
Remember that scene where right after they made him and all the cops are shooting in the target practice and they're like one by one all stop shooting because they hear his gun.
God, it was like a triple fire pull or like triggers. Like, oh my God, that's so badass. So cool. There were so many cool things in that movie. Those big ass like mecha guns. Ed 209 was cool. There was just so many, like, as a child, like seeing these things that were being displayed. They were like advances in conventional weaponry that we hadn't seen yet. I mean, this is super cool.
Have you looked into stuff about like the creation of the movie, like the symbolism that they try to put in things, all the metaphors and stuff like that? Have you looked much into it? Are you that big of a fan of RoboCop?
I like RoboCop a lot, but no, I haven't. I love it so much. I don't want to like taint it with anything too much. I just love watching it. But I'm interested to see what you're talking about, though.
Ed 209 makes me think of it, and because Ed 209 is one of those things that when you're a kid, it's the most badass thing in the world, right? Like Ed 209 is like, holy shit, this thing is amazing, right? And Ed 209 plays into a lot of the satire of the movie because I mean the movie is it's taking a piss all over corporate America, right? It's a big middle finger to the giant corporation coming in and buying the police department, and Ed 209, Paul Verhoeven, the director, said that Ed 209 was like his big symbol of how like America in the post-Vietnam era is this like corporate world where they only care about profits and things being big, right? Like the 6000 SUX car that looks amazing, but it only gets 8.2 miles a gallon. and,
Yep.
and the Ed 209 is that metaphor, is that it's this big, intimidating, scary killing machine that costs billions of dollars, but it can't even walk down the fucking stairs. Right? That all like that stuff. It's not just put in the movie to be fun. Like there's an actual point behind it, which is what makes this stuff resonate in the years and decades after it comes out. Is why it holds up, because it's not just an action movie.
It's also like a warning against, AI kind of in a way as well.
Sure.
It's just like a Robocop is part machine, part human, whereas Ed 209 is just straight robot.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like an acknowledgement of, we always will need some sort of human element to regulate things. We can't just leave it up to machines because they're not humans and they don't have nuance. They can't even walk down stairs in some scenarios.
Yeah.
So like that, like, see, like being able to take something away like that from a movie is like really interesting. It's like, wow, it's like even the smartest people working on this thing can't think of everything.
Yeah, exactly. Like they make it big and impressive and dangerous and scary, but we forgot to program it how to go up a flight of stairs. It's just like this big middle finger to, like, I don't know, the corporate profits over everything. Dick Jones in the bathroom, he says we had a guaranteed contracts for 10 years. Who cares if it worked or not? Like that's the whole point. That's what Ed 209 is. And then they do the Robocop remake, and now there's Ed 209s patrolling the streets as these deadly creatures. I'm like, that's not what Ed 209 is supposed to be. It's not supposed to work. It's not supposed to work. That's the joke. The joke is that it doesn't work.
Yeah, see, like whenever they make a remake of a movie, you got to keep the core, like, moral lessons intact.
Yeah.
Like you can't just take away the whole concept of Ed 209. Like that was like, man, as a kid, you're exactly right. There was nothing cooler. Like Robocop wasn't going to be Ed 209. There's no damn way. And then Ed 209 can't go downstairs. That is brilliant. And they took that away in the remake? Are you serious?
Oh, yeah, yeah. In the remake, the Ed 209s are stationed all over the place as security drones, and Robocop has to fight a couple of them in a big CGI action scene. It's so bad.
And that was another nod to the anti, corporate crony capitalism thing. Was, Robocop is part machine, and he does have to follow these rules that have been put into the machine side of him, and he uncovers all the cronyism, and he can't do anything about it because they've programmed his AI side, or his mechanic side, or his robot side, to not be able to shoot or not arrest the head CEO guy that's like doing all the corruption and everything. And it wasn't until the guy says you're fired that he can actually take action. Like that is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Like there's just so many good, cool things in that movie.
Are you a fan of Robocop 2?
I love Robocop 2. God, Robocop 2 is good.
Yeah, it's
I haven't seen that one as much, but man, that one is really good too, because I remember the fact that the villain is a kid. I remember seeing that as a kid, and that was like kind of off-putting. I was like, "Are you serious? Like the bully at school is actually like a head of a crime organization?" And then there was the whole nuke. The fact that we're at the height of the Cold War, and that there's a drug going around ruining neighborhoods called nuke. It's just hilarious.
It's like in nuke. What does it do? I don't know. People inject it into their neck, and then they feel good. Like they don't really say anything other than that.
It's hilarious.
Yeah, RoboCop 2 is a movie that has a lot of really good ideas in it. It just kind of gets really bogged down in its plot because RoboCop becomes like inconsequential to the last half of the movie, because his arc is finished. Because his arc is that brilliant scene where the corporate overlords are talking about how RoboCop is a bad influence on kids, so they need to put in all these new directives. And so they put in like 300 different directives that all contradict each other, and RoboCop starts like, like he just becomes a total wuss, and that stuff is great. And then he goes out and he electrocutes himself to reset his program, and that's awesome. But that's like 45 minutes into the movie, and so from that point on, RoboCop doesn't really have anything to do in the movie, and that
you gotta take out the bad guys.
Yeah, it becomes RoboCop's got to stop the bad guys, but all of like the any sort of like personal evolution or like character development of Alex Murphy is kind of like brushed aside, and it becomes comic book action movie, which is why I think RoboCop 2 never reaches RoboCop 1 status, but it still has some really good ideas, especially in the first half.
Yeah, if they would have had him being able to go through that struggle throughout the whole thing, and maybe at the very end he figures out how to reprogram himself.
It could have been done like that. Like his wife, the movie starts so good because he's stalking his wife, and the police department has a lawsuit from her. That RoboCop is stalking her, and she comes and she sees that. He has the face of her dead husband. Like, that stuff is so good, but it's all in the first 20 minutes of the movie, and then his wife just completely disappears from the story. So it's like, if they could have kept that stuff going, then the movie, I think,
some sort of closure there would have been good.
Yeah. Because did you know that in the original RoboCop, the studio wanted Paul Verhoeven to cut the scene where he goes back to his old home?
Really?
Yeah, and that scene is like completely. Yeah, they were like, hey, this is an action movie, and you have this long sequence where he's just walking around the house and remembering things. And it's like, the audience is going to get bored. And the director was like, this is the heart of the entire film. Like, this is the most important scene. That's like going back and remembering who he is and who his family was, and that sets him on his revenge quest. You can't just cut that out because there's no guns firing. Yeah, but
everyone can relate to that. We're all human.
Yeah,
like we need something to remind us that RoboCop still is in touch with his human side.
Yeah,
it'd be crazy to take that out.
There's so many cool things that I've learned from like directors' commentaries and stuff, like their decision to hide his face for so long because RoboCop is such about the journey of RoboCop returning to being Alex Murphy by the end of the movie, right? Slowly. And next time you watch it, listen for this. Notice how the first time you see RoboCop, whenever he talks, there's like a vibration mechanical tone behind his voice, right? Like as he's talking. And as the movie goes on, it lowers and mix. So that by the end of the movie, his voice is uninterrupted by sound, and now his voice is fully human. They do things like that, where like you don't see you just see his mouth for an hour of the movie, and then in that fight with Ed 209, that's his first moment of real vulnerability, and he gets his ass kicked, and then you see his one eye, and that's the first time that you see the man of Alex Murphy be behind the RoboCop suit. Like, dude, go back and watch that movie and like keep an eye out for that stuff. It'll take the movie to a whole other level. It's so good.
It's kind of like a Data from Star Trek Next Generation take, where Data is like, he was pretty much made to be an android, but he's programmed to try and become human as much as he can. And like, it's fun as a viewer to see that journey of a robot, because we see like an android or something like that, and we're envious of all the multiple bajillion calculations it can do at a time. It's super strength, it's like ability to just block out emotion and always just choose the best option, like logistical option. And then to see the machine side, the android side, and in this case the RoboCop side, I guess, like try and get in touch with the human side and be envious of the emotions that we feel, and being able to understand nuance and try and become more human. And it's, I guess for Alex Murphy, it's trying to get back to being as much human as he can.
Yeah.
But that's like always an interesting take, because it makes everyone think about being human. that we take for granted. It's like, what if machines like, envy us? What if they won't kill us because they envy us or something like that? Like, it's interesting.
Are you a fan of the Star Trek discussions from Red Letter Media?
I don't think I love Letter Media. I don't know if I've done Star Trek. I've seen the Star Trek discussions though.
It just flashed back to me that you were the guy that recommended them to me.
Oh yeah. Well, Red Letter Media, they when they did that Attack of the Clones.
That's what you sent me. You sent me Plinkett's Attack of the Clones in like 2015, and
God,
I'm in love with them ever since.
Same here. A friend of mine showed that to me, and it just said everything that I felt.
Yeah.
I was like, someone articulated my feelings that I've been able to try and get out for so long. Like, it's like, thank you.
Number one, everything.
They have Star Trek discussions though?
Oh man, like Mike and Rich from that channel are huge into Star Trek, and they have a series on that channel called Review, where there's no skits. It's just two of them sit down and they just talk about a movie that they love, right?
That's cool.
And they Mike and Rich started a series on Review where they were reviewing the new Star Trek shows, and they did Picard and they did Discovery, but now they just uploaded part 1 of videos where Mike and Rich talk about their top 5 favorite Star Trek: The Next Generation episodes.
Oh man,
And
that's so good. There's so many good ones.
I think you need to go directly to their channel and put that on. It's about an hour, and it's the first half of them just talking about Next Generation.
No
And
shit.
I think you would really like that.
Yeah, that's
all this talk about
there's
data.
so many cool, like, conceptual, just concept-wise for Star Trek Next Generation. Like, the fact that some of the things that they came up with, they crammed it into an hour. There's so many different episode archetypes that some were very political, having to do with the Federation versus the Romulans. Some were like really psychedelic, about finding like a alien species that's way beyond ours, and that's just crazy to think about. Like, we watch Star Trek and they're doing warp drives and they're teleporting and everything, and the fact that they're out in the stars and they're still finding like aliens that are greater than them. It's just like, wow, that's crazy. Like, not even just greater than them, but like omnipotently more powerful than them. So those episodes where they come across that type of stuff. Then there's episodes where they come across, maybe modern day humans, and how are they going to deal with they're monitoring us, but one of them gets caught, and that whole planet finds out that there's aliens that exist because they got caught, surveying them and stuff like that. And what would humans do in that scenario? Like, what's the moral thing to do? And that was like the prime directive was like, well, do we like just deny it, or do we tell them that aliens do actually exist? And then that's just a few different archetypes. There are just so many different, and they're one of my favorite episodes where everyone was de-evolving. Like Riker was turning into a caveman. I think Picard turned into a chimp. Worf became like this crazy predator-looking thing, and it was killing people. Like Troy became like this fish, and she was just constantly just sitting in the bathtub, like just trying to breathe in the underwater.
You gotta wonder what they think when they get the scripts. You're gonna turn me into a chimp this week, huh?
And then it was like only up to Data to be able to save anyone because he was a robot. And that was another cool thing about that show, is every character, kind of like Doom, has like a specific role that they can play, that they have a strength that the others don't. Like, Troy's like got Betazoid powers where she can feel people's emotions. And then you have Data, obviously he's an android. Worf is like super strong, like just blatant brute force type of guy, and he's not afraid to just take matters into his own hands and just take care of business. And then you have Geordi, who's like super smart technical stuff, but he's also has this visor so he can see certain different visions that no one else can see. So there's episodes where they utilize that to help solve problems, and they all just have a different role. And then Riker is pretty much William Shatner from the original Star Trek, But Captain Picard, it's kind of like the filter to, pull it back a little, stop being so like, aggressive all the damn time and wanting to fist fight everything. Like everything is really, really, really well done in that show. I love it.
Yeah,
All the characters
you're
got
gonna
their own
love
roles.
those discussions then.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna check that out then.
Slips, I think this is going to be a good place to stop it. We have been all over the place. This has been a really, really fun discussion, man.
Yeah, I think we've covered like 8 topics or something.
Yeah, so it's about dinner time. So I just want to thank you for doing this with me. This was just an idea that came to my mind, and I was like, I'd like to talk to people, and I'm going to call up Slips and see what he thinks about it. So I really appreciate you joining me for this. It was a lot of fun.
I appreciate you having me on. I'm honored that I'm the first person you wanted to talk to. That's pretty a big thumbs up for me. I appreciate it for sure. Cool. Anytime.
Awesome. All right. Thanks everyone for listening to this podcast interview, whatever it is. Thank you to Slips for being here, and we'll see if we can get something else going later. If there's someone that you guys would like me to talk to, put it in the comments, and I'll see if I can make that happen. And until next time.